Welcome to the dynamic learning hub of ExcelR at Andheri East. A prime spot conveniently located at just a 5-minute walk from LIC Andheri Metro. In our journey of over a decade, we have proudly trained over 2 lakh students. We have also been recognized by Deloitte, Silicon India, and other accreditation bodies. Experience learning like never before in our spacious and comfortable classrooms. With high-definition projectors and state-of-the-art acoustics in place, we ensure effective learning even to the farthest point in the room. A hybrid mode is a game changer as you can enjoy the benefits of a light classroom from the comfort of your home. Even if you happen to miss any classroom session, you can still attend the same session with the same trainer at the same time at your convenience, maintaining consistency in your learning progress. Want to get started? Join us for a demo or career chat over a cup of coffee at our Andheri branch. ExcelR. We don't just train, we build careers.
Yes, so the collaboration with ExcelR was an excellent one. We conducted a Power BI workshop with Advanced Excel over a span of 3 days. The workshop was almost 12 hours long in total. Mr. Karthik, who was an amazing trainer, helped the students understand the concepts deeply. I am sure that the students will be able to apply these concepts in their careers as well as their daily lives.
The trainer, Mr. Karthik, was an excellent person where he explained in very detailed manner on how to give great insights using very complex data sets.
So it was a machine learning workshop. We learned a lot from the course and it was a great experience attending the workshop.
The trainer was very helpful. He had a hands-on approach with his teaching and it was fabulous.
This was a great experience for me. So I would absolutely love it if ExcelR and its team would come again to our campus and conduct more events like this.
It was a great course and it started from basics and took me to a great extent.
The experience of the workshop was really nice. The feedback from all the students was positive. They understood the concept. The workshop was also practical based with some questions. The experience with ExcelR was very smooth. They helped us in conducting the workshop smoothly right from the booking of the vendor and deciding the course till the distribution of certificates. In overall, this workshop was a success during our technical fest Atmos, and I thank ExcelR for being a part of it.
very much interested in learning digital marketing course for a very long period of time, but I don't get a proper platform. So later from our college, I get to know about ExcelR and I enrolled in ExcelR course. It was really good experience. Our course has been taken by Mayur sir, and he was very good teacher. He's not only focusing on theory part, he's doing how real digital marketing works, and it was in total very good experience. I get so much of knowledge. Here they're not only focusing on study, they're also conducting different exams to test our knowledge, and as we are giving the exam, so to appreciate our work, they give certificates for the toppers, and along with the certificate they give hampers. Thank you, ExcelR.
Recently, I was searching for digital marketing courses online in Google, and I came across ExcelR, and I attended a digital marketing course which was for 15 days. My mentor Mayur helped me for attending these classes. So he is a very and helpful way. In the course end, there is a exam which I topped. So I came to the ExcelR office in Bengaluru. This digital marketing course has helped my career and my skills to develop, and the certificate has helped my company to join. Thank you, ExcelR.
I came to know about this course from my college. Actually, for learning platform, this is very nice, and I learned from here and AI from online because it's we are using technology in more. I seen the classrooms and faculties. Classroom is very nice. After completion of exam, they will give gift and certificates. Thank you, ExcelR, for giving these courses. I gained the more knowledge from here, and thank you for Excel for teaching us.
Hello guys, I'm Vikram Mahajan and I'm studying in Swami Vivekananda Institute of Technology College, and I came across a
Good evening, all. I hope you're all doing well. Good evening, Aditya sir.
Yes, yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah, we can start the session, sir.
Okay, ma'am, I'm just going to start the session. Is everyone able to hear me right now? Okay, can I get a quick confirmation in the chat box? Is everyone able to hear me now? Thank you very much. So now we are going to continue the class. So let me just share the screen, then we are going to start. I think everyone is able to see the developer console right now. And my screen is also visible to all of you. So today guys, we are going to discuss about the things which we learned till this point. Now we are going to do something today for a actual project, actual method or a actual function which we are going to implement in our CRM software if we are developing something. Suppose you are developing a CRM software for a gym or a fitness type of institution. So first create a fitness type of class. So its class name will be fitness, and this class was created here. Now this time, suppose you are contacted with a person or anyone or a fitness organization, and they want to create a CRM software for their to manage their customers and their everything using that thing. In that particular CRM software, they have a particular function for they want to calculate the BMI of every particular person. So how they are going to do this? So as a developer, how you are going to create a BMI index which was going to work as calculating the BMI of every people. Now this is a simple challenge, and it in the starting when I tell you it will look like very tough that how we are going to do this. But this is not very tough. This part is actually a very easy thing. So a BMI index is actually having some particular problems or we need to solve that thing. So first, right now you see, right now we have the problem, and the problem is that we need to create a BMI index function which was actually going to calculate the BMI of every people. Now, before jumping to the problem, first you understand what is the requirement of this problem and how we are going to calculate the BMI. So first, calculating a BMI, we need some things in our programming. The first thing we need to calculate a particular BMI for a person is body weight, body height, and these are the two parameters which we required from the admin. So the admin will give us the body weight and the height of the particular user, and based on the body weight and height, we are going to give him the BMI. So first of all, we require two things in this particular thing. We need to calculate a BMI index here. We need to calculate a BMI index first. Calculate BMI of a particular person. Now this particular parameter is going to take two things. First is height of a particular person, and the second it wants the weight of the particular person. Now as we talking about here, when we talk about a problem solution, like if you have a problem, the first thing you are not going to directly jump on the code. First you need to create a solution map or a roadmap, like you need to write everything in a comment so you understand what you need. Now you see here we need actually two things as a height and weight. So the developer, you need to think about which type of data you are going to put for this. So height and weight will always be in decimal, so we are going to use the decimal data type here. Now after taking height and weight, this function should return a BMI value which also should be in a decimal value, because maybe the value will be in decimal. So we are going to use the return BMI using a decimal. If the particular value is not in decimal, is not decimal, it will be integer, then the return type will be like this 45.0. So it will be very good. Now comes the main part for creating our function. Now how we are going to create this function? Now if you see, this is a BMI index calculator. So we actually want to create this function as a static function, because we want to call this function every time just by using the class name. We actually don't want to create instance of these type of functions. Remember, where you are going to use the static and where you are going to use the normal functions. See, when you think a particular method is useful and it was going to call every time or multiple times, at that time you need to specify that particular method is static. Otherwise, you can make that method normal without any other special keyword. In the last class, we already talked about some special keywords like static, virtual, and override. So today we are going to create a first static method or static BMI method, which was going to calculate the particular BMI of a person. So how this was going to happen? If you all remember correctly, the first thing we need to write is the access modifier of the particular method. So the access modifier will be public. Now the second thing will be the static keyword, which will be a optional or a special keyword. If you want that this function will be accessible without creating an instance, you can name it basic static. And now when you are writing your particular codes and this in particular your console or in your Apex class, please open the problem section so you are able to see your problem after writing every code. After the static keyword, you need to give the return type. What is should be the return type of this particular method? So as I already told you that the weight and height will be decimal. So there will be very high chance that we are going to get decimal return type. So here we are going to specify the return type should be decimal. Now after the return type, the next thing you need to specify here is the name of the particular method, that what will be the name. The name should be anything. So it was going to calculate BMI. So I'm going to name it calculate BMI. And this will be the name of my function, calculate BMI. Now after this, what is the next thing? You need to pass the parameters inside this particular function. Now if you see, this particular function was going to take two parameters. The first is height and the second is weight of the client. So here we need to pass two decimal values. The first will be decimal weight or decimal height. So here I'm going to pass the two values, decimal, and this variable name will be decimal, which will be a local variable. Now see, when we create a particular variable inside a parameterized function, this particular variable is a local variable. It was not accessible inside this class. And all the other variables which you create outside of the class are global, means they are accessible in whole classes anywhere. But these variables are not accessible outside of the class. So here we created two variables. The first should be decimal weight and the second should be decimal height. Now we have two variables here. The first is weight and the second is height, which was going to take two parameters. The first parameter is the weight and the second parameter is the height. Now we created the basic function type, like how this function was going to look. After this, here comes the main part to calculate the BMI. For calculating the BMI, we have a formula. And the formula of calculating BMI is very easy. What you need to do, you just simply need to multiply the height, or you need to get the height square and divide through weight. So the formula will be like weight multiply by divide by height square. So how you are going to get height square? So height square will be basically get by height multiply by height, and you will get the height square. And this formula we are going to use to calculate the BMI index of a particular person. So this is same thing. This is not very easy. So now when we come on the body, we need to implement that formula so we are able to calculate the particular, you can say the BMI. Now when you are calculating this BMI, you need to store this in some place which we are going to return. So here we are going to create a new function or a new variable which will be decimal result, and this result is going to store this particular formula. So just like I'm going to copy this thing, weight is equal to height multiplied by height, this line, and I'm going to just put it here. Now this particular formula is going to return what it was going to return. It was going to return the BMI of a particular person based on the particular things which we here specify. Now after this, what is the next thing? After this, we need to specify, if you remember correctly, after the function body, you need to specify the return type. If the program is a return type, you need to specify what it was going to return. So here you see it was going to return this result. We want that this result should be returned. So here we are returning this result, return, and then we need to specify result. Now this particular method was created. Now we created a basic method which was going to take two parameters. First is weight, second is height. And according to this, it was going to give us the result. Now in the problem section, you see right now we don't have problem. So our class was perfectly created. Now try to save this class by using save. Now this class was saving. And now we are going to come on the debugger section. And here we open execute anomalous step. And here we are going to execute our class. So this class is a static class, so we actually don't need to create an instance. We are going to actually calling by this name. Okay, the name is fitness. Actually, sorry, fitness, and then we need to use the dot operator and then the function name which we are just created, which will be this calculate BMI function. Now, if I just copy this line and paste it here, control VMI, and if I put here double quotes and try to execute this, let's see what I'm going to get. So if I click on execute this time, here you see I am getting an error like method does not exist or incorrect signature, void calculate VMI from the type fittest. We are going to get this error because this particular method was accepting two parameters and we are not actually passing any parameter. So it was not able to tell which parameter we are checking. So here we need to pass two parameters. The first will be a weight and the second will be height. So right now I'm going to give a random weight and a random height. Now here just let me give a random height and a random weight. So here I'm going to give 75.5 comma, and the height should be anything like I'm giving in centimeters. Suppose I'm giving 172 centimeters. Now if I click on execution this time, see our code was executed successfully. And if we click on debugger section, here you see we are not able to see any output. We are actually not printing this. The calculate where BMI was calculated, but we are not able to see this. For able to seeing this, we need to use the system.debug. Now here is everything right. Let's put this thing and see does this work or not. Now we put this part and now let's try to execute this. Now when I execute this time, our code was successfully executed. And now if I click on the debugger section, here you see we are able to calculate this BMI. But right now you see this is a very random variable. The BMI should be not like that. This is because we actually don't specify in our class that what is this weight should be, what is the weight data, like should be grams or it should be kgs or it should be tons. The same goes for the height. We also don't specify the type of height, that what this height will be, like this height is going to be in meter or this height is going to be in other thing. So we actually don't specify these things, and that's why we are going to get here the error. Now here we need to change these values in minutes, and or sorry, we need to change the weights and some other things, and we need to change the height in meters. So this is what we need to do to work this thing properly, otherwise it was going to give some results. So how we are going to do this? For doing this, we need to first come here and in this line, and here we are going to change these two values. So we are going to change this decimal weight and decimal height into, like, we need to change the weight into kgs and the height should be in suppose meters, or you can say centimeters. So how we are going to do this? For doing this, we have a very simple thing and we need to follow this thing. So first of all, we need to write our method name, which will be like a new method here, decimal hour, and this will be a new variable I created, or sorry, decimal weight in kg, weight in kg. So this will be a new method, decimal weight in kg. Now what I'm assuming right now that this weight should be in like grams or any other. So whatever the user should give, the weight should be in kgs. But right now I don't know what it was going to. So by default, the weight, if you choose a weight or a decimal value, it will be going to be the same, and the height will also going to be the same. But here, if we change this decimal weight, we need to assume what type of weight the user giving. Is he giving the kgs or is he giving the grams? So by default, it will be kg because this will be an integer value. But the height should be something else because decimal height is something else. If you want to take this in meters, what you are going to do this, you need to change this variable. We actually don't need to change this thing, and I'm just going to change this height into meters. So decimal height in meters, and now we are going to change this in meters. So suppose we are assuming that whatever value the user was giving right now is a centimeter height, and we need to convert this into meters. So how we are going to convert this? For converting this, we need to first write the height and we need to divide this by 100 centimeters. So we are able to get the height in meters. So control plus the height, and it was going to divide by 100. So we are able to get the height in meters. Now, when we are resulting this time, result weight is equal to this time height, and height should be not. In the place of height, we need to specify something else. And what we are going to specify? We are going to specify height in meters, because right now we are calculating for height in meters. So now if I just go here and change this data type again, now we are actually calculating whole thing in meter, and we just change the data type or the type of height, right? So right now the height should be in meter, and this is how you are going to change the things or the values. Now after this, now if this time if I just click on save again here, I'm just going to click on save, and our code was saved here. Now it was taking a time. Okay, now it was saved, and now if again I am copying the debugger console, open execute anomalies tab, and this time you see I passed the same number and the height, the weight. Now if I click on execute this time, my code was again executed successfully. And now if we again go to debugger section, we are able to see a different result, because this time the body index was calculating into actually meters, or according to the, you can say, the height will be in meters. But when we are calculating centimeter, we are going to get this value. But when we are calculating in this, we are going to get in meter. So this is how you are going to change these things. Now this will be your body mass index, so it will be either in height, or the height will be either in meter and centimeter, which if you check on Google, you will find what is the accurate or the right way for calculating BMI, because calculating BMI will be different for different types of action. Now this is a simple example or sample function how you're going to do this, how you're going to create a function. And if you want to change the type of the particular parameter to something else, what you're going to do, you're not going to directly use that parameter, you create a new variable, and then whatever parameter what you want, you can change that thing, and then in the results section you need to pass this parameter to get your result. Now I think everyone has cleared with this example. Does anyone have any doubts in this example? Does anyone have any doubts? Okay. What is formula of BMI? Formula of BMI will be, I think I already sent it. Now after this, we are going to see one more example here where we are going to calculate the pace of a particular person. Now how we are going to do this? And this time we are going to use the same formula for converting the past value in something else. So right now this is my first value, and now I'm going to create. Now this Jim owner told you also, the authority, that he wants to create one more function, and that was going to calculate the pace of a particular speed person. So how we are going to make this thing? For calculating pace, it will be also not very tough. So first we want, how we are going to calculate a pace. For calculating pace will be, you can say, it will be means speed. So we are calculating here pace of a particular person. So for calculating a pace, what we need? We need three things. First, we need the distance and the time, because these are the two things which we require to calculate some one thing. So first we want distance, but here comes the critical part. This time we want the distance should be in kilometers. And the second thing which we want is speed. And now here comes the main part. We also want that the speed should also be in hours, not in minutes. So we should want that speed should be in minutes, or you can say, no, right now we are actually wanting speed should be in minutes, because everyone was going to enter speed into hour, like whatever hour he was done. And how we are going to return this particular pace? So we are going to return this pace into kilometer per hour. So here comes the one more problem, that we are actually returning this thing in kilometer per hour. So return in kilometer per hour. So here what we get? We first get the distance in kilometer. We need to convert this distance into kilometer, speed into minute, and then we need to return into kilometer per hour, this particular pace of a user. Now here we are going to come a little bit complicated function, but this is also not a complicated. Now first of all, the same way we need to create our function like the function, and this function will also be a public and a static function, because I don't want to create a class for calling this function. So public is static, then we need to write a return type, and here see the return type will be what. Now remember, again we are going to put the decimal return type, because the speed should be anything and it will be in point. So we are going to use decimal again, and then here we need to specify the function name. So name it like calculate underscore pace, or you can say speed. So this function was going to calculate pace for a user, and here we need to pass again two parameters. The parameter will be decimal distance and decimal minutes. So here we are going to pass the parameter, which will be decimal distance, and the second thing we are going to get from the user is a value of decimal minutes. So we are taking two parameters from the user. First we are going to getting distance, and the second we are going to get minutes. Now this minutes is like we are going to take the taking the values in minutes, and now we need to calculate both of these things. Like we are getting the distance and minute, and now we need to convert this distance into kilometer, and this minutes for it will be in hours, and we need to convert this speed into hours. So how we are going to do this? The same way you see here we need to create two new variables, and then we are going to convert these two variables, and we are going to use this variable into our function. So first of all, let's convert our first thing. So first we are going to convert the minutes. So here we are going to create a new variable named decimal. Okay, spelling should be not any problem actually. The problem will come when you don't write these things properly. So spelling mistake will be a normal. I think I assume that, but the main problem is that you need to write the syntax properly, the method way writing of the method, and the code should be worked properly. These are local variables. It will be named anything. It does not depend on. So decimal, we need to create a variable. Now I'm going to create name as hour, and this hour was going to convert this minutes into hour. So how we are going to convert minutes into hours? So we already know that if we divide minutes into 60, we are able to get our hours. So minutes, the spelling should be right. MINQ, yeah, this is right. Divide by 60. So now when I do this part, I'm able to convert this minutes into actually hours. Now after completing this part, the second thing comes. Now here comes the distance part. Now I also want to convert the distance into hour, or I want to calculate the pace. So how I'm going to calculate the pace distance? Now if you see this distance is already given by the user in kilometer. Now if you're thinking that distance is going to give by the user into like for example meters, no one is going to give the distance in meters, but there will be a chance that distance should be minutes. Like for example, someone only run for 50 minutes, 40 minutes, and 30 minutes. So the decimal minute should be, the time should be in minutes, but the distance should be in kilometers. So here what we are going to do, we already know we are going to get the distance in kilometers, so we are directly calculating the pace. So how we are going to calculate pace? So we need to create one more variable, decimal, and here it will be pace, or you can say speed, and it was going to store the value. Now I think both all of you already know what is the formula of calculating particular speed, which will be distance upon time, or you can see here we need to do the same thing. So first we need to copy out the first variable, which will be distance, because we are not actually changing this variable. So we are directly calling this distance, and then we need to divide by this hour, because here we are actually not calculating this distance on the basis of minutes. We are calculating on this hours, because we are returning the result in kilometer per hour. So here decimal divide by hour, and this line will also terminate. After this, our code was done. Now we need to return. Here comes the one main part. See, doesn't matter how many variables you created in your first function, but you need to specify the accurate return type, like what you are returning in that particular function. So in this function, I'm returning two things. I'm returning, actually, I need to only return one value. I need to return this pace, because this is the main thing which we return. So return pace, and here we are going to just put a parameter, and this pace was going to return by this particular method. Now this method was also created and done. Now if I click see on problems, I don't have any problems in this program also. And now if I click on again files and click on save all, the code was again saving. Okay, it was taking a little bit time. Okay, the code was saved. Now I'm again coming on I'm coming on the debugger section, open my anomalies tab, and this time instead of calling this same function, I'm going to copy the same line one more time, and here I'm going to put, and this time instead of calculate, I'm going to calculate the pace instead of VMA. So I'm copying this line, the function name which will be calculate pace, and copying this function, and instead of calculate VMI, we are actually passing this function. Now this part is done, and here we need to pass the value. Now if you see, the first thing we need to give the distance. So suppose I'm giving like 30 kilometer, and here the second part is come, we need to give the time. So right now I'm giving the time should be like 145 minutes, like this is the thing. Now if I click on execute this time, let's see what we are going to get. So now when I click on execution part, here our code was executed successfully, and if we click on the debugger section, if we click on the debug only and see the logs, here we are able to see both things. We are able to see our time, like how much time we are going to get. Like here you can see we are getting 12.4137 like this and 25.52051, and we are going to get these value due to this region. Now this is how you are going to work for this particular type of class. Now I have a challenge for all of you. Try to solve this challenge when you are at home and after this class end. Now if you see this particular thing is actually a very bit complicated because it was showing too much of points value. But what you are needed to do, this is a challenge, you need to cut this point after 2 points. Means you need to return a value after this 2 point. Means after this point 2 it should not be returned. Like after 0.52 it not give any value. So 25.52 was only going to return. So you need to cut after 2 decimal points. After 2 decimal points it needed to be cut, then it was going to give a proper result. And what you need to do, it was also not a very actually decimal function or a method. So what you are going to do, you just need to come here, and in this place, in the time of return phase, here we need to call that particular function. After this decimal place, you need to call that function. So this will do this thing, and it was already a function in the decimal class. Does anyone have any doubt till this point? Anyone has any doubts? So this is your second method. Let me just send to you. Anyone has any doubt, or should I move to the next topic? Okay, let me just send this code to everyone. Now, wait a second, I'm just going to tell you where you are going to find this particular method which is going to cut the decimal. So if you want to get this file, what you need to go, you need to search for particular decimal class in Apex. And when you search this particular thing, you are going to get a particular page like this page. Here it was just opening. And here you can see you'll get this first thing, Salesforce Developer Guide, Decimal Class Apex Reference Guide. When you open this particular tab, you will see this type of icon, and here you will able to see multiple functions for this decimal class. Now if you just go a little bit down, here you can see you will get different functions which you are using. So right now you see this is the first function, rounding mode, specify rounding behavior for numerical operation capable of discarding precision. Here you can see you have different things like decimal example, these things. If you go a little bit down, you are able to see different types of functions like half even, half up, unnecessary. Then you have function up. Then you have function other functions like ABC returns the absolute value of the division. Divide the decimal by the specific divisor. Then divide divisor dot scale. Divide the decimal by a specific divisor. Set the scale that this number of decimal place of the result using the specific scale. Double value, return the double value of the decimal. Format, return the string value of the decimal. Int value, return the integer. You can use this thing for type conversion. Long value, pound, return the value of precision, return the total number of digits for decimal. Then you have return the round approximate of the decimal. So you can use this round function also to get this value. So what you need to do, you need to call this round function to use this. Then you have here rounding mode, return the round approximate decimal, the number of round to zero decimal place using to rounding more specific by rounding mode. Now we need to actually use this function, rounding mode. So now when you click on this function, here you will able to see this particular thing. Right now here you can see decimal number like this and system.assert equal, and this is this, and here it was my decimal dot scale. You can use these functions to round off your number and print the accurate thing. Now this is what you need to do by your own. You need to find the accurate function which is going to work for this. Now come to our program again, and now we are going to talk about the main thing in our particular programming language, which will be the second concept of OOPS programming language, which is constructors. Now let me just send this all code. I think you already get this code. So let me create one more class, which will be the constructor class, and then we are going to see or talk about constructors. Like what is actually a constructor and why we use constructors. So here let me type constructor. Now a constructor, wait a second, I think I already created a constructor. So let's create one more class, Apex class, constructor class here, constructor. demo class. Okay, so constructor demo was created. So here you see, right now we are going to talk about constructor. But before talking about constructor, let me just show you what we are actually doing. So sometime when you created an instance of a class, whenever you are trying to create an instance of a class, for example, if you just create the instance of this class, suppose this function was not actually static. So let me just remove the static from here. So if these functions were actually not static, what is this function? These are normal. And when if I try to access this function, this time I need to create the instance of class. And I think everyone already know how to create the instance. So for creating instance, first of all, you need to write the class name, which will be this, control V, then the instance of the name, which will be near anything. I'm just writing new one equal to, then again the class name, sorry, using the new keyword, and then the class name. Now, by using this, you are able to create a new instance. But here you actually put this double column and this bracket. Now, what is the meaning of this bracket and why we put this bracket? So this is what we actually call a constructor. So when you put this bracket, at that time, if in your class you created a constructor or not, by default a constructor was called whenever you created this thing. Because of creating a new instance, we are already able to create a new class. Now, if this time I want to execute this code, I don't need to specify this fittest. I need to specify here the new one. So now when I write here new one, and here I also need to write new one. And then let me just save this code and try to run this code again and see does this work or not. Just give me a second, guys. Okay, so here we are going to done with this. This code was saved actually. Now, if this time I'm click on execution, the code was again successfully executed, and we are again able to see our whole thing in here, this section. Now, what is actually this constructor and what was actually happening here inside this thing? Now you see at this time we actually not creating a constructor in the class, but a constructor was by default created or by default called whenever a new instance of class was created. So whenever you create a new instance of a class, the constructor was actually called. Now I have a question to all of you. Suppose if I have a static method and if I have a normal method, and if I don't create the instance of a class, at that time the constructor was called or not? Can anyone give me the answer? If I have a same class and at that time if I don't created an instance of the class, I'm using a static method. At that time, the constructor was called or not. Because see, the basic definition of constructor is that a constructor is always called whenever you create an instance of a class. So whenever you create an instance of any class, at that time, a by default constructor was called. If you created a constructor at that time, the constructor was called. Otherwise, a by default constructor was called. Now, what is the use of constructor and why we use construction? So first we are going to learn about constructors, and then we are going to see the definition. It doesn't call the constructor. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? Does anyone else have any other response? I get 2 to 3 response and my okay. No constructor is called during static. Okay, created. Very good. It does not call. Janu, static not required instance, so no call. Okay. 2 to 3 people give the right answer. Okay, so first let's understand what is actually a constructor. So constructor is nothing more, it was also a function which was created by the programming, or you can say it was a default constructor, a default method in a programming language. So a constructor is basically a special type of function or a method. Let me just give you the basic definition. I think I already written it. Let me just see somewhere. Let me write. Wait a second. Wait a second, guys. Just give me a moment. Just give me a second. I think I already written about everything here. Let me just open developer console. Okay. Wait a second. I just going to show you the definitions. Just give me a moment. Are you guys able to see the second tab or second Salesforce org tab? How many of you are able to see the second Salesforce org tab? Does anyone able to see it? Not visible. Wait a second. Just give me a moment. Just give me a minute. Just okay. It was right now. Is it visible to all of you? Okay. Now I think it was visible. So now I think this screen was visible to all of you. So right now here you can see I have a very simple definition for constructor. Like a constructor is a special type of function or method in object-oriented programming, or you can say in OOPS, to initialize or initializing the object. Now, what is the object? If you see, whenever you are creating a new instance, here you can see this new one is the object of this class, which we are using to refer or which we are using to access all the functions of the class. So why we need to use a constructor? So we use constructors to define this function or to initialize this particular object. That's why we are using a constructor. That's why whenever you called a particular function, that time by default, if you created a constructor or not, the particular constructor is automatically called. After this, here you can see when you create or initialize an object from a class, constructor is automatically called to set up the object with initial value or performing setup. So basically, we use constructor to initialize some value to the particular function or particular constructor, or we can call to give some process to use that particular thing. Now the question is here, in this particular example, we actually don't create any constructor. So how this was actually happening? So by default, when you don't have any constructor, the program will call the constructor by default, by itself. Now, how you are actually going to create a constructor? So for creating a constructor is also not very tough. It is also very easy to create a constructor. So if you want to create a constructor, first of all, you need to know constructor name should be where I'm actually okay. Here I need to write okay. So constructor name should be caps lock. Constructor name should be same as class. So a constructor name should be same as class. This is the first thing you need to remember. The second thing you need to remember when you are creating a constructor that you can create as many constructor in a class you want. So as many constructor you are going to create in a class. Now in Apex, we actually have two types of constructor. First is a parameterized constructor, and the second is a non-parameterized constructor. So first we have a parameterized constructor and a non-parameterized constructor. Now many of you have a question like in the first thing you write that constructor name should be same as class. And the second line I told you that you create as many constructors in a class. So suppose if someone created 10 constructors, so how the particular compiler or the system was going to know that which particular constructor we need to call? So see, constructor name is same as class. So if we have 10 constructor, the 10 constructor name should be same, but every particular parameter should be different, because in a constructor the only thing make difference about the constructor name is the parameter which we are passing. So if you have 10 constructor in a class, the 10 constructors should get 10 different parameters. Like if someone getting a string, someone getting 3 strings, someone getting 2 strings, someone getting decimal, someone getting integer, someone getting long, someone getting floats, like this type of parameter. So 10 constructors should be get 10 different values. Then this is going to work properly. Otherwise, you are going to get an error. Now, after this, let's talk about the next thing. Okay. Now, after the second thing, you see parameterized constructor and non. So in this particular section, we have now first talk about the non-parameter constructor, and then we are going to talk about parameterized constructor. So now here you see, first I'm going to create a non-parameter constructor. So how I'm going to create a non-parameter constructor? So if you remember the first line, constructor name is a function, and it will be going to call the same way as a function is created. But the problem in constructor is that you need to create the constructor by using, or you can say by using the class name. So whatever the class name should be, your constructor should be the same name. Otherwise, it was not going to create. So let's try to create a blank constructor first. So right now I'm going to create a blank constructor which was just going to print a simple debug message that constructor is called. So let's try to create this constructor here. So how we are going to create this? First we need to write the type of or access modifier. So here we need to specify access modifier. So constructor will be public. And the second thing, it should be the same name as this class. So this class name will be needed for here. So here I'm going to write this thing. Okay, a second. I need to copy this line actually. Control C, public, and here comes the class name. Now after writing the class name, the constructor was actually created, and here we need to write the body of the constructor. The constructor is same as a method, so that's why this is how you're going to create a basic constructor. Now this constructor is actually not holding anything. It was just simply going to print a simple message. So here we are just going to print a simple message like system.debug, and here we are going to print like constructor called. Now when I just terminate this line here, now what going to happen this time? So now whenever I create the instance of this class or this particular class, what was going to happen? Now if I just remove these two lines of this code, now let's see what was going to happen when we just execute this code. Now let's just click on save this time. And here you see, actually I don't print anything. I'm not printing any information. I'm just creating the new instance of this. If whatever thing we hear or we studied in this section, like a constructor is a special type of function or method used in object-oriented programming to initialize of the object. When you create or initialize an object from a class, constructor is automatically called. So right now, if this statement is true, so when I create this new instance, this constructor should automatically call, and we are able to see this debug message in our debug section. So now if I click on execution part, our code was again executed successfully. And now if I just go on the debug section, here you see we get a message that constructor called, because when we create this particular constructor, at that time what was happening, when we create the new instance, this particular thing was automatically called without any problem. Now comes the next part, how we are going to create some parameterized constructor. So let me just remove all these things and create a new class, constructor class. Okay, I have already a constructor class actually. So right, I'm just going to copy these things here. Okay, Control X, let me come here, just removing this thing. Yes, and here I'm going to create, we have this message, and this is my constructor class. Now I'm going to make this class, or I'm going to create a function now for a COVID-19 or a pandemic function, and using that particular methods we are going to understand the concept of constructor. So in this particular function or method which I'm going to create is going to count the patients or recovered patients of COVID-19 patients or any pandemic patients. So it was a basic function which was going to count all the patients number which was going to recover in a country or in an area. So first of all, let's try to create this particular function. So now this particular function has two variables. So this is going to two variables. The first variable this function has, as I told you, two things. The first is the total number of recovered persons in an area, and the second is total number of recovered persons in a country. So public, and here we are going to name this function name, and this will be a basic public function, a public variable, because if you don't specify the data type at that time, this is going to be private. So public data type, which will be integer, and then the name of the variable. So this should be recover in suppose city. So we are talking about recover in city. and here we are going to pass a value. Now this time you see this value will be 0 because we are not giving here a value. It was going to change according to the thing. Now second, I'm going to create one more variable, and this variable is going to calculate the patient's name in a country. So public integer, the second will be same, and here in the place of city, we are going to specify country. So right now here you see we have two variables. The first is recovered in country and second is recovered in city, and second is recovered in country. And right now these variables are 0. Here we are going to create first a basic constructor or a blank constructor. After this, we are going to create a parameterized constructor and we are going to print something. But before doing this, I'm going to create a basic function here. And this function is going to increase these numbers by 1 or 2. So let's try to create two functions which was going to increment these values. So right now I'm going to create a basic function which was going to increment this value. So how I'm going to create? So my function name should be a new function which was not actually returning something. It was just incrementing the value. So it should not actually return anything. It will void toy and it will just increment the value here. So public void increment. Now this particular method was going to increment the value of these two things, recovered in city and recovered in country. So public void increment, and now what it was going to increment? It was going to increment the particular, or you can say the particular these two variables. So here we need to just write this body of this method, open this, and here we are going to increment. Now I think everyone remember how to increment the value. First you need to copy this thing, variable, paste it here, and if you did plus plus, it should be incremented. The same way we are going to increment this value also. Control C, and here I'm going to paste Control V. So this is a simple method which was going to increment these two values by 1 every time we call this particular increment method. So now in the place of fitness, I'm going to call this constructor demo method and see that this function actually works or not. So if I just remove this fitness here, Control V, constructor demo new class, and here instead of place of fitness, if I remove this thing again, here we created this new, and we are going to call this function new one dot increment function increment. Now, whenever I call this function was called, and the recover in city and recover in country, these two variables was actually created. Now, those who don't understand why we are creating this functions, actually this is just a simple functions which I want to create to show you how actually constructor works and what is the actually use of constructor. So we are creating a basic functions which was going to count the patients in a country or in some other place, and we are just using these functions to try to understand constructor more deeply. So right now this was just created. Now, whenever I call this function, what was actually going to happen? These two variables was simply created, or you can say incremented. So right now here I'm just going to print the both variable using the system.debug, and here I need to use the method name which will be new one, and here what I'm going to print, I'm going to print this recover country, new one recover city control.c, and here we are just simply print this dot recover city. Now system.debug new1 recover.ct, and here we are just printing this value. The same way we are going to print the recover in country also. So control C, and here paste these values. Now recover in city, and this should be recover in country. Now I'm actually printing these two lines also somewhere else. So these are actually going to print these two variables. But I'm going to print these two things before calling that method, and let's see what was going to happen. Now let's save this class and try to run our program. So click on save, and now if I click on execute here this time, let's see what was happening. So our code was again executed successfully this time, and if you go to the debug section, we're actually able to see 4 type of value. First we are getting 2 0 value, then we are getting 2 1. Why we are getting 2 0 value? Because see, when I call this function on the starting time, actually the first time when we execute this thing system.debug, these two are actually not holding any value. That's why we are getting here 0 and 0. But when we call this function increment function, we are able to increment both value, and we get the incremented part here. Now guys, let's suppose I call this function one more. For example, right now I'm going to call this function one more time. Now let's see this time what we are going to get the result. So now if I just copy this function one more time, and here if I just execute this again, now this time see, on the starting, this will say that system.debug, every country has one patient recovered. So now let's do this execute again, and this time it will executed again. Now if we again to the debug section, here you see what we get. We get one for the first time, but here this will be in a different country. Suppose it will for a different country, but this will be in different city, but this will be in country. So this variable should change from 1 to 2, but it was not actually changing. Now what I'm trying to tell you, let me just clarify what I'm trying to tell you here. Let me just close these things here and here. So open the debugger section here again and try to tell you what I, so see, since this is the first time you call this function. Now when you call this function first time, recover in city and recover in country, both variables was changed. Like in a country city, suppose this was a random city, recover in this city, we get one person recovered and total number of recovered question will become one in the country. But when you call the same function again, suppose this is for a new different city, so recover in city now become one again, but recover in country will again become one. But we don't want, we want that this will become two. So how we are going to do this? So first of all, we are going to see how we are going to make a particular variable which was going to change every time. Right now you see this will be a public variable, that's why this was happening continuously. So what we need to do, we need to change this variable so this particular problem was not happening. So what we need to do, we need to change this into static variable. So public is static. Now if I change this variable into static way, now this variable is static, means whatever value you are going to specify here, it was actually stored that value. And after the second time when it was again called, the value will not change. So now if I just save this code this time and try to execute again, now this code was saving here, and this time if I click on execution part, our code was again executed. Okay, so here you see what we get. A static field cannot be referenced from a non-static context. Recover country from the type constructor demo. So here we are getting the error that we are not actually able to access the thing using the particular instance. So we need to access this using the class, it shall be the constructor demo. So copy the class name, and here we need to call this things, control V. The same thing goes for the down also. Here we need to change this because we are now calling a static variable demo. Now if this time if I try to execute this, our code was okay, we are again getting a non-static context. So here you see we are going to get this error, and actually I identify why we are getting this error. So this error will come on line number 3 actually. Okay, so actually I will also calling this here. Let's try to remove these two codes actually from here. Now let's try to execute this time. Okay, line 9 column 14 constructor. Okay, here we are getting error because I just specified 0 here actually. Now this will work properly. Okay, now this time our code was executed successfully, and now if this time I'm going to the debug section, here you see this time again we are getting 1 and 1, but I just changed the particular method into a static method. But why I'm getting this time again 1 when I call the same method 2 times? Does anyone have any answer? Because here what we did, here we are getting the same result 1 and here we are going to get the same result. But this time I just changed this method into a static method. But still this recover country will be 1. It will not change into 2. Does anyone have this answer why this was actually happening? What is the difference between the syntax of a function and a syntax of a constructor? See, the syntax of a constructor and the syntax of a function does not have any. Is my voice breakable right now, or is my voice clear to all of you right now? Can anyone confirm? Okay, now I have the question here. Can anyone tell me why this was again happening? If I just make this method static. Now when I make this method static, actually this function was static right now, but still I'm getting this thing. I'm actually not able to do this. Can anyone have any answer? Why actually this thing was happening here? Does anyone have any answer? Okay. So let's try to create one more function here and then see what was going to happen. So here I'm going to actually create one more function. See, this is actually not happening here because we are actually printing all these statements. We are actually calling the same statements again and again. We are actually not passing any values. Here, this is the one function which was just incrementing at one time. So when you call this function, it was increment one time. When you call the second time, it was actually increment the second time. So this is not actually putting a value here. If you call this function 10 times, 11 times, this is not going to work. You need to create one more function which was going to print these two results. When you created that function, maybe that time we are able to print the right thing. So now I'm going to create a new function which was going to print the particular patients or all of this information. So this function should be static function. So public, and remember why am I making a static? Because it was accessing a static variable here also. So that's why this will be a static. So public is static. This was not going to return anything. It was just going to print the total number of patients treated. So public is static void, and here we are going to name this particular method print patients. Now this was going to print patients every patient. Now this function is like empty. It was not going to take any parameter, and it was just simply going to print all the values here. Now for this, we just going to print here system.debug, and here we are going to print something. So system.debug, and what it was going to print, this function is going to print this static variable, this public static. So system.debug, here I'm going to pass a message. This math recovered in country patients patients. Okay, now here we need to concatenate this with our this particular variable which will be recovered in country. Now guys, here what happened if I just don't make this particular static. Now suppose if I just don't make this function static here, let me just wait for a few seconds so that all problems will solve, then we are going to see next thing. Let me just remove this line here first, and here see, right now we don't have any error, and now our function was created, and this function was actually going to print this particular thing every time. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just simply going to call this function and try to print every line, and now I'm going to see what happened. So again I'm going to click on here save first, click on save. Now our whole course was actually saving, and now let's open the debugger section this time, open execute anomalous tab, and here you see we are going to call two functions. First, this time I'm calling new one dot increment, and it was going to increment my variable. After this, what I'm going to also call, I'm going to call the second function here also. And actually, I'm just not going to print this information here, this piece of information, because it was actually printing the same thing. So new one dot increment, it was going to print the new one dot city, the total patient. And this was actually, I'm going to call this function, which will be a static function, which will be this call using this particular constructor or demo. So constructor or demo, control C, and here we are actually calling this particular method dot print patient, and now this will be done. Control V and just copy this line again. Put terminator, and the same thing we are going to do in this line. Control C here, and in the place of this, we are going to call this function again. So control V, and now let's try to execute this time and see does we are able to change the problem in our code or not. So now if I click on execute this time, let's see what we are going to get. So now our code was executed once again, and now if I click on debugger section, you see we again get the same method, recover in country patient 1 and recover in country patient 1. But why this was actually happening? Even we did all the parts which we need necessary, but this is the same problem we are again facing continuously. Like this variable is not changing. So what is the problem here? So the problem is here we need to make this variable static. Means after one it's changed, it was not going to be again 0, or again this function is going to call. So does anyone have any answer or any like solution how I'm going to do this? I'm going to make this variable fixed, so it was not going to change. Does anyone have any answer? Anyone has any answer how I'm going to do this? Sir, why? Why don't we because that was a particular static function, that's why we are not using object. Does anyone have any answer why we are actually not able to get this result, why we are not able to print the patient 2? Does anyone have any answer? See this code, I have given you like 2 minutes to identify the problem, and the problem is very simple. This problem is not very tough, it was a very simple problem, and it has just a single line of code and a single word. If we put that thing in our program, everything will show. Does anyone identify what is the problem here? You have 2 minutes, guys. Just give me 2 minutes. I'm just coming from the restroom. Then we are going to start the class again. You have 2 minutes to identify the problem, why this thing was particularly happening. So scroll down the class. Okay, just let me show you the class. Here. Okay, so this will be your whole problem. Let me just make it a little bit big. Now I think this is, see, there is only one single mistake and one single problem here, and if you find that, you will able to make that thing. Okay, I am back right now, guys. Everyone, how many of you are able to find the solution of this particular problem? Does anyone find the solution why this was actually happening? Okay, some answers. So I think again we have to call new one. Add recovers dot city in system. We have not called the increment function. Okay, very good. Those who are giving me the right answer is like we actually not calling this increment function anytime. If you see this whole thing here, we are actually calling this increment function once. That's why this was happening. So we need to call it once more time, and then this is going to happen. So if I copy this new one increment one again, and after this line, if I paste it here again, new one dot increment, and this time let's see what we are going to get. So now if I execute this code again, our code is execution successfully, and if I click on debugger section again here, now this time you see this was happening. So only two people will identify this problem, that we actually not calling this particular statement 2 times. Now, in the first session, you see, we actually call this statement once, and we are just printing these information. That's why we are getting. Now, how this particular thing happened? So now when you created a static, or you can say a basic static variable, at that time, this static variable was accessible by all of the class. Means this value was not going to change. So after every increment, you can see the value was actually not changing. The value will be 1. So whenever you use this particular thing, you are able to do this thing. I mean, you are able to make a variable static. Now you need to be very concerned with a static variable because this variable is fixed every time this particular method operates. So you need to be very careful when you are going to use these type of methods. Now this program is done here, and now we are coming to our main part, which is constructor. Like how we are going to put constructor in this particular section. So putting constructor here is a new type of task, so which I'm going to do here. So let me just open here. And now first time what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a parameterized constructor, because I think we already see what is a blank constructor. So here let's create a parameterized constructor and try to pass these values using a constructor. Right now we have two variables and we are going to pass the value using a constructor. How we are going to do that? See, actually in the starting, if you study the definition here, if I just show you again, what it will do. An object for a class consider automatic load to set up the object with initial value or perform setup procedure. So a constructor is also used for setting up the initial value. So right now we are going to set up some initial value for these two things. So now how we are going to do this? First of all, I'm going to create a parameterized constructor and try to pass some value inside these two. So let's try to execute this and see how this was going to particularly work. So first, we are going to create a parameterized constructor, and for this, what we need to do, you already know the constructor name should be same as the class name, public, then the name of the class, which will be constructor demo. So copy this line here, Control C, public. Here we need to specify constructor demo. Now this constructor demo was created, and here remember this constructor is actually a parameterized constructor. So we are going to create, let me just pass here a command that this is a parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. So now this is actually a parameterized constructor, and what we are going to parameterize? We are going to change these two values. So for this, we are going to take or pass an integer here, which was going to store some value here. So right now I'm just going to create an integer in this section, like name like integer, and this name will be like numbers of patients. And we need to pass this number of patients inside both of these values, like recover in city and recover in country. So the initial value will be set something. Now this part is done. Now we need to open our body of the constructor, and here we are going to do this. So what we are going to do, we are going to pass these two things inside this number of patients. So how we are going to do this? First, we are going to copy this recover in city, copy this line. First we are going to pass actually this. So we need to copy this number of patients, and here we are going to put this. So number of patients, one more line. And what these are going to pass equal to recover in city copy this line equal to recover in city equal to recover in city, and we just did this part here. The same way we are going to do this recover in country, and Control C here and paste it. Now let's put here, and now this part is done here. Now we created a parameterized constructor where we are actually passing this integer value which we are getting from the constructor, and these two values was set according to that. Now let's see what was going to happen. But before, if I just go a little bit down, if I scroll it up, we get some problems here. But right now we don't have any problem, because sometimes you see the problem, but when your code was successfully executed or run, we don't see any problem. Now let's try to save this class again and see how this thing actually works. So if I click on save again, this time my code was again saved. Let me just remove all things. Let me open my debugger console again here. And now here you see we are doing this thing. But this time, guys, if I try to increment or try to run this, let's see what I'm going to get. Now, if I see here, see, when I try to execute the same code again, but this time actually I'm going to get an error. And see what we are getting error. On line 1, column 27, constructor not defined, constructor demo. So here we need to specify a particular variable, or we need to pass a value, because what we created a constructor demo, and in this new one dot increment, sorry, in this section it was not defined or not created, because we actually don't pass any value. So here, remember what it was going to take. It was going to take a number of parents which was integer. So here I'm going to pass 45 value, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to first print these two things here. So how I'm going to print these two things? For this I need to call these two functions which was actually printing. So let's copy this and paste it here. The first function is basically system.debug, which was simply printing the information. And the second is the method, here you can see, which was actually printing this static method, or which was actually printing all the prints in this area. So we have here two things. So here you can print, this is before I increment, or you can pass these values inside the particular statement also. So we are not going to do this. These lines, I need to just copy these lines, control C. Here also this is before increment, here we are actually doing increment. After first increment, after first increment, copy this line again, and this will be after second increment. After second increment, and this will be just give here a message again, second increment. Now see, what is the importance of writing a comment? That your code will be more readable and everyone now able to understand what you are doing in every single line. Now when I try to execute this, first thing what I need to do, I need to get this value 45. On the second, what I need to get this value 46, and in the third print I need to get the value 47. Now let's execute this part. Now code was, this time our code was executed successfully, and let's see, it was actually taking a little bit time. Okay, now code was executed. Now go to the debug section and let's see what we are going to get this time. So now if I click on the debug this time, here you see first we are going to get 45, and here we get a message recover in country 45. Why we are getting this message recover in country? Because here we are actually calling this method. If you go a scroll little bit, this method, and it will print this information. Let me just give here a space so it will look more better. Let me save this again, control S, it was saving. Open execute environment step and try to execute this again. Okay, it was taking a little bit time. Now our code was executed this time successfully. Now if I click again on the debugger section this time, you see here we get first 45, and then second we get recover in country 40. Then we get 46 and 46 as accepted, and in the last we get here 47 and 47. Because this time we are able to execute all of our code, and we are able to see everything clearly in this using this sections. Now this is how these whole things was going to work properly. Now this is how actually a constructor is going to work. Now after doing this constructor, let's go to the next example and see what we are going to do with the next example. Now I'm coming on the next example, and my next example will be this. So now here we are going to get to the next example. Now what happened guys, if we just created a new, let me just remove everything blanks, we are not. Now what happened if we just create one more constructor? Because here you can see the first thing what I write, constructor name should be same as class, as many constructor in a class. So we created many constructors. So right now here I'm going to create one more constructor, a public constructor or a blank constructor. So this will be a blank constructor. Just to specify the same way, blank, and let's see which one was going to execute first. So this will be a blank constructor, the same name, public, and the class name which will be constructor.demo here, and it was just a blank constructor. And if I just put this and putting here, and here I'm just going to write a simple debug message this time, system dot debug and what I need to print here, that blank constructor is called. Blank constructor is called. Now, if I try to execute this line, this time let's see what was going to happen. Now we are going to see which constructor is going to call. So here we created this constructor, and now if I just remove this line here, now this time I have a question to all of you. Can anyone tell me which constructor is going to call this time? The first blank constructor or the parameterized constructor? Does anyone have any idea which constructor is going to call the first? The blank constructor or the parameterized constructor? Does anyone have any answer? Which constructor is going to call this time? The blank one or the parameterized one? Okay, very good. Blank one, very good. Janvi, you have a very good answer. The blank one is going to be called because here we are actually not past anything. So if I click on execution this time, see, here we get again an error like line 1 column 27, constructor not defined, constructor.demo construct. So here what you are going to get, we are again going to get this error that constructor is not defined, and we are actually not able to call this blank constructor. Why? Because both constructor was created clearly, but this time we are actually not able to call this constructor. So how you are going to call a constructor? See, you create as much constructor if you want, but not you are going to call this constructor. So how you are going to call a constructor? For calling a constructor, what you need to do? You are not going to call a constructor likely directly. So this will be a parameterized constructor because you already created a parameterized. So it needed to be some parameter. So what we are going to do here, I'm going to just pass a parameter like 45, and after this, how I'm going to call this thing? Like because if I click on execution, the part was executed successfully, and we get our result. But if I just remove this section, and here I will see I don't get any result because it was not printing. But if I just remove this 45 from here, I'm not able to call the blank constructor. Like if I execute this again, this will give me an error on line 1 column 27. So how I'm going to fix this? For this, we have a keyword in Apex is this keyword. Now, if you want to call a constructor, see, first you create as much constructor you are going to call, but you need to call these constructor inside a constructor. So how these are going to call? So these are going to call using the this keyword. So here you need to specify this, and after this you need to specify brackets and this quotation, and this keyword is going to refer to this particular constructor. Now how this keyword is going to refer this, because it was only like written like this and does not have anything. See, every constructor has the same name, so you are not going to specify name. How this keyword know that this we are talking about this? Because actually if you see, this time this constructor.demo does not have any parameter. So when you specify this keyword, it was actually referring to this particular constructor. Now if this time I pass here a value like 45 again, 4, and if this time if I click on execution, let me just first save this here, click on file, and if we click on save here, our code was again saved this time, and let's try to execute this and see what we are going to get. It was taking a little bit time. Okay, so it was saved, and now let's try to execute this and see what we are getting. So now this time our code was again executed successfully, and if we go to the debugger section, we are able to see the results. So it was just loading. Okay, now it was loaded, just wait a second. And now if I go to debugger section, here you see we are able to see the blank constructor is called, but we are actually not calling the blank constructor, we call the parameterized constructor, but the blank constructor is automatically called because we have this keyword. Now guys, suppose I want to call these two things and I want to print these two things. So how I'm going to print those things? I think everyone already know. For printing these two things, I have two variables, the both are public. So just going to call this variable system.debug, system.debug. Let me just call these two things, and I want to show you one more thing. So system.debug, first I'm going to call this actually the public variable. So system.debug, here let me come bracket, here we need to write the instance name, which will be this new one, new one and then dot and our particular variable name, which will be recover in city. So recover in city. Now I'm just calling this function right now only one statement. Now, and I'm going to call my method also, which is this particular print patient. So I'm just going to call this method also. So constructor.demo, control C. Here I'm going to paste this thing, control V, and let me just show you something more interesting. And here we are going to put dot and just going to call this print, and here we get our method name, which will be print patient. This method. And here you see we are going to enable constructor.demo and we are actually printing print.patient, and this part is also done. Now I'm just going to call my static method again, and the static method is again control V, constructor.demo dot, and here you see when you put a dot and when you try to implement a by default constructor, or sorry, a method which is static, you are able to see every method here, and you are able to also see the type of here. So here you can see we are going to actually use this increment type of. So it was already getting on this section, and here it done. So now guys, if I try to execute this time this code, everything was going to work fine. There will be no any problem. Here we say non-static method cannot be referenced from a static. Okay, so constructor.demo. Okay, actually this method will be not increment. It should be called with this new one actually. New one. Okay, so execute this. This time our code was again executed successfully. And if we again go to the debugger section, let's see what we are going to get this time as a result. So it was taking a little bit time, guys. Just hold it on. Let me just open debugger section again. Execute it again. Okay, it was taking a little bit. No response from server. Actually, I think this is a server based problem. Let me just copy this code from here and try to rewrite this code somewhere else. So let me open the class here, copy these codes and paste in a new console, because I think we are getting some problems. Okay, so actually due to some issues this was happening. Okay, so actually this was taking a little bit time. Okay, now this is done. Are you guys able to see this tab? Actually, due to some reasons we are not able to execute. Okay, so we are actually not able to execute our code. Let's try to execute this once again. Actually, we're not able to get the response from the server. That's why this was happening. Wait a second. Let me just copy all these code first. Control C and try to refresh this. HTTP response. Okay, so we are getting this with HTTP response. Let me open Salesforce again. Am I audible to all of you right now? Okay, I think Salesforce is not actually right now supporting. Let me just try to open Salesforce again. Just give me a second. Actually, we are not able to open Salesforce this time. It will be a server problem. Let me just open. Can anyone please try to open Salesforce in your laptop and see does this open or not? Or should I only get this problem or everyone else? Welcome to the developer console. Let's try to refresh the speech once. Okay, so it was like actually taking a time. Let me just try to open this in Chrome. So actually it was also not opening on Chrome also. Let me just it is working. Okay, let me just check. Just give me a second. Let me just check my internet connection and then retry to connect it. But I think internet is actually working fine. Search for Salesforce here again. Okay, now it was opening. Let me check in this section. Does this open or not? No response from the server. Okay, let me just close these two tabs again. Try to reopen Salesforce here again. Okay, it will open. Okay, it was taking a little bit time. Let's see which account was login first. Okay, it was also remind me later. Okay, actually it was not opening here. Okay, no problem. We are going to see in the here also if this is not opening. Okay, so it was open in the Chrome browser, and now let's see our program which we are talking about the constructor. So let me open the debugger console here again. Just getting a little bit smooth time. Just give me a second. Windows. Okay, so it was taking a little bit more time than expected. Just wait a second. Wait a second, guys. I just need to reconnect it, and then I'm going to start the class. Just give me a second. Am I audible to all of you? Can anyone please confirm? Thank you very much. Let me just reshare my screen. I just need to check something. Just give me a second, guys. Let me share the Microsoft Edge again. Okay, it was taking a little bit while. Just give me a second. Okay, let me retry to log in it. Actually, due to some problems, I'm not able to log in on Salesforce. Just give me a second. Click on login again here. And let's see that this time this was working or not. Okay, now I think it was right now. Okay, is everyone able to hear me right now properly? Okay, the problem was solved. Let me open my debugger console again. So let's open the files. New, creating a new Apex class. And just name it like constructor. I think I have already this class created. So let me just open the resource. And this section, maybe I will find this thing. Not there. Okay, here we have maybe this class. This class may be the demo class. Okay, let me just see once more. New Apex class. Open classes, and here we have names, company, constructor demo. This is the class. Let me just open this class. Okay, so now our class was opened again here, and let's try to execute this. So this is the class we just created, and here we have the blank constructor. And if you already see, we are using this keyword to call this blank constructor. Now, what happened if you want to do this in the last? Suppose if I come again on the debugger section here, and this time if I just create the instance of this class, which is the name, the constructor demo. Let's copy this line here first. Is everyone able to hear me properly? I think my voice is clear to all of you. So here, if I just copy this thing, constructor demo, and the name is like new one equal to new, and just call this thing again and create this constructor. Now, if I pass this 45 value, it was working fine. And now here I'm going to just call one more thing. I'm just going to print this static variable, public variable. So how I'm going to print this? For this, what I need to do, I just need to name it new one, instance name, new one dot the particular name, which will be this recover in city, and I want to print this public variable. So new one, and then the variable name, comma here, and we need to pass this thing inside a particular system.debug. And here we need to specify system.debug. Now this time this thing was going to work properly. Now if I click on execute this time, let's see what we are going to do. So now this time if I click on execution part, we are getting an error like unexpected token new one. So here we are going to get an unexpected token for a new one. Let's see why we are getting it again. Okay, let me see where we are getting this error. On line 1 column 8. Okay, so we are getting this error actually. New picture demo. Let me just see why we are getting this error actually this time. Oh, wait a second. Let me just first save this class actually. Save all. Just give me a second, guys. This is due to some issues. This was not working properly as. Okay, so let me create the instance of this class again. It was saved, I think. Okay, here comes the main part. Let's try to log in. Constructor demo, class name, put it there. It was already there. Constructor demo. Now I'm going to create again the class. Due to the server issue, this was actually not working. Create a new class. So new one is our name equal to new, and then the class name again, parenthesis, and the constructor was created here successfully. Now after this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to call this public variable. For this, first of all, I need to add system.debug, and inside this, we need to call using this new one instance. So we created this new one, and we are going to call those three. So new one, and we are going to call this recover city. So if I print this recover city, new one dot recover city, and just print it here. And here I'm going to pass a value inside this constructor. So I'm right now passing here 45. And now if I click on execution this time, my code was executed successfully. Now if I this time, let's see what I'm getting as a result. So now it was actually done. And now if I click on the debugger section here, you see first we get the blank constructor is called, then we get 45. Now, is it possible to change the execution way? Like, for example, if I want to execute this blank constructor after this first constructor call. So what happened if I just print this line, remove this line from here and put after this line, after this? Is this going to work or not? So see, if I put it here and come on problems, here in a short while, we are going to get a problem here. Right now it was not showing. Just wait for here a second. Try to save this class and see does we are going to get this problem or not. And here you see we get this message. On line 16, we get the problem that call to this must be the first statement in a constructor method. Means if you are trying to use this statement, it should be the first method. Because if you put this method after the end of the constructor, this is not going to work. Now just remove this and put it here. Now what happened if you make one more thing? Like in the constructor, you see right now here we have a number patient. But what happened if I make this thing the same value like this recover city? So control plus C, and this time what I'm going to do, I'm going to just change this number patients here. I'm just going to remove this value and change it to recover in city. So now it will be like recover in city, and here in the place of number patients, I need to remove these things. Now let's see what was going to happen. So what I did here, I just created a new local variable. You can say a local variable which is same as a global variable, because these are actually global variables and these are actually local variables. So what I did, I'll just simply created a new variable. The name is same. The name is same as global variable, and now I'm going to execute this code and let's see what was going to happen. So first, coming on the debugger section, open my anomalous tab, and this time I'm going to print both values. So first, actually, I'm printing this value. After this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to print the second value, this as static. And for this, I have a function here, print patient. So for this, I just need to call the class name because this is a static method. So static method does not be going to call from the instance name. So here constructor.demo dot, and here we need to write the function name, which will be this print patient. So copy this line, paste it here, and we are able to do this. Now, if this time if I execute this program, let's see what we are going to get. Now, for the same as the program sake, what we need to get 45 in both value. Because if you see this time, I'm not actually calling this increment operator or any other operator. First, I'm just printing this value, this public variable. Then I'm created a static variable, and I'm calling this static variable using this static function, which is used for printing this particular thing. Now, after this, what we are going to do here, we are just when we click on this on the execution part, like the regular way of execution, both values should be 45. But let's see what we are going to get. So now if I click on the execution, our execution was successfully done here. But here comes the main part. Now, if I go to the developer section this time again, we are going to get a different result. So now if I click on debug only, here you can see we get 45 and 45 on the both place. Let me just show here on this thing. Now this time recover in city and recover in city. So we are going to both values same on here on recover in city and recover in city was actually converted. Now, sometime, let me just see, actually, recover city is equal to, I just need to change the locations here, okay? Wait a second. I just need to change. Okay, this will be good. And in the place of this, I need to remove this from here. Wait a second. Control X. Now this will work properly. Okay, equal to here, and this time this should work properly. Okay. Now save this code again and let's try to execute this again. Actually, this is a problem here. Okay, this was saving. It was taking a little bit time. And one more thing I need to ask everyone, is my voice clear to all of you? Is my voice lagging right now, or it was clear to all of you? Okay, so here you can see our code was saved again on this time, and let's try to execute this again. And this time, let me just see what I just want to do is done or printed in a accurate. So again, it was taking the request. It was again executed, and let's see what we are going to get. Okay, it was waiting a time, loading the view contents. Okay, the content was done here, and let's see our debug section this time, and hopefully here you see this time we actually getting 0 and 0 on the both places. Even when we are actually initializing on the debugger section, if you come here on the debugger section, we are actually getting 0 and 0 this time. Means here we are not able to initialize these two values. Now why this was actually happening? Because here you specified recover.city. So when you specified recover.city and recover.city was actually 45 here. So we are actually getting 0 and 0 every time because this is very inconditional. So if you want to solve this problem, what you need to do, you need to use this keyword. So when you use this keyword, at that time, what was going to happen? See, now if we don't use this keyword, the program will how it will work? The program will work like it was going to know that these values should be a global variable. So it will treat them as global variable, not this variable. But if you use this keyword like this, then it is known as a local variable. So how we are going to do this? Not like this. We just need to remove this line here from here. And what we need to do, just remove this thing from here also. And now here you see, let me just remove all these things. And how we are going to change these things. So now see, here I created this figure and city. Now if I want to put some value inside this figure and city, what I need to do, first I need to copy this variable, control.c, putting it here. After this, figure.city equal to this dot recover entity. So when you specify this dot recover entity, what it was going to know that this particular variable is belongs or it will be talking about this variable. But if we don't use this dot recover city, what was going to actually happen? It was thinking that after this recovered city and this recover in city is actually this variable and it will going to pass 0. But when you put this dot recover city, the program knows that we are talking about this. After this is done. And in the second thing, you are not actually going to change for recover in country because here we are talking about two different variables. So here we are going to put recover in country here on the second line. And again, if you want, you can put this dot or you can just simply write recover in city. It was going to work because this time we are actually talking about two different variables. But when you are talking about two same variables, it was going to first use this global. But it was a very good practice. So using this keyword, so this dot, and here we need to specify recover in city again. And now this time it will work properly or fine. So paste it here and turn it. Now, if we see this time, we are not able to see any problem in this particular program because this is worked properly. So you need to use this keyword in your particular constructors whenever you're using. So now if I click on files here and click on save, this time, let's see, it was saving or it was going to produce some error. So it was taking a little bit time during saving. Now, what happened, guys, if I create one more constructor? In the meanwhile time saving, I'm going to tell you one more thing. As you see here, we created first constructor. Now, what happened if I create one more constructor? And that constructor is used for passing a value in recovery city. And again, I create one more constructor which was used for passing a value in recovery country. Now, at that time, how we are going to execute this? So now, if you have one more constructor like this, for example, if I just remove from this line a particular this message, recovery city is equal to this. Okay, I need to remove this here from this. So you see, this is our first constructor. This is, let me just first send this code to you. Okay, it was taking a little bit time. My screen share is working fine, I think. But why this was actually happening, I just don't know why Salesforce is not responding. It was taking too much time. Unknown message check for JavaScript error. Okay. Let me just try to send this code first to all of you first. Try to execute this thing and you are going to get your result as clear. Okay. Wait a second, I need to copy this thing. Copy and let me just first share this code to all of you. So this is a code for constructor and let me write one more code here. Now this is going to work finally when you use this keyword. But what happened if you have three keywords or three particular constructors? Like if I just remove from control X from this line, now this has become one constructor. Now if you see, now we have first parameter parameterized. Now I'm going to create one more constructor. Now this is my first constructor and this is the second. And here I'm going to create one more constructor and this constructor is again a new parameterized constructor and it is named as parameterized constructor 2. Now what this constructor was going to do, this was going to use for passing the value inside this static function because this was first was used for passing the value in recursivity and now I'm using create one more constructor which was used for passing the value in the particular, you can say, recover in country. So copy this line, it was going to be same as this constructor. Instead of here public constructor demo integer recover in city, I'm going to put it here recover in country. And here instead of this dot recover in country, I just need to remove these lines. And instead of what I need to print here, I need to print here this recover in city. No, wait a second. Just let me remove these things here from, and what I need to print here, wait a second, where is the body? Just move this thing. Okay, this will be for finally. Here I need to write this dot, because this will be recover in country. So this dot recover in country, control C. Here we are terminating, and here this we are passing this value inside this recover in country. So first let me write this thing, then I'm going to explain you everything what was happening here. Control C, and here we are going to pass this. So see what I did here, I just created one more constructor. So here right now you see I have three constructors. First I have a blank constructor, then I have a parameterized constructor and the parameterized. The blank constructor is just simply printing a message here. Unable to patch contain members, enable error message, check for just. Okay. So here we see we get this error. Let me try to save this again. Actually it was not saving. Let me just try to put this all thing in a new class actually. Then this will have work. Control X, file, new, apex class. And here I just name it class constructor. Then it will work. Constructor. Maybe this time it will work. It will creating a new apex class. Okay, it was actually taking too much time, guys. Just try to understand. Okay, so right now we are just trying to focus on this thing, what actually was happening here first. So in the first line, you see we just created a simple blank constructor, and then we create two parameterized constructors. Now, if you see the first parameterized constructor, what is this constructor was going to do? So this constructor take a local variable recover in city, and this recover in city was used for passing here a value. So now this recover in city is here recover in city. Now we are talking about this variable, and then we are saying is equal to this dot recover in city. Now when you use this dot recover in city, now this variable was only mentioning on this; it was not mentioning on the top. So whatever value the user gave in this section was going to use by this. After this, you created one more parameterized constructor here. This will be the public constructor demo integer recover in country. And what this constructor was used for, it was used for passing the value inside this recover in country section. And here we did the same thing, recover in country is equal to this dot recover in country. So this time it will know that this recover in country is this variable and this dot recover in country is this. Now, how you are going to call these three constructors? So what you need to do, you need to come to your third constructor like here. After this, you need to specify here a line. Sorry, not here. On your third constructor on the starting, and here you need to call all these constructors. First, you are going to call this, and then you are going to use this and pass a parameter. Now, when you call this constructor, whenever you write this keyword inside this, whenever that constructor was going to call. So this constructor was going to call recover in country. So you need to pass a value for recover in country on your debugger section. And here on this section, I'm actually calling first this constructor. So here I'm going to pass value like 25 for this constructor. And then after this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to call one more. I'm going to call the blank constructor also here. So this is how you're going to create call as much constructor you want. Now, how the debugger look like for this? How you're going to write the debugger code for this? So right now here you see we have created constructor demo new constructor demo. So instead of here 45, this 45 was actually going to store in this recover in country, because this constructor was used for storing the value in recover in country. So now when you call this constructor, what was going to actually happen? First, it was going to call this 25, means it was going to call this constructor which we just created, and it was going to pass a new value, or you can say a new value inside this recover in city. After this, it was going to call the second value, and this constructor was done. And then we are able to print these two methods. So now when you execute this thing and you print this information, you are able to see two new messages inside both things. And first, you are able to see 45, and recover in city, you are going to get, I think, recover in city, yes. In recover in city, you are going 25, and in recover in country, you are going to get 45 value. So try this code on your debugger console and see does you get these results or not. Let me just say, send this to all. So this is the constructor class here, and this will be your debugger console code which you use for executing this class. This is all for today. Copy constructor. Okay, I already sent it. Recover country is equal to this. Yes, very well. Does anyone have any other question, or should we? If anyone has any other question, I think my browser has some problem. That's why I'm not able to execute these things. Okay. So today we are going to see how we are going to able to execute all of those problems. Does anyone have any doubt regarding how you are able to execute multiple constructors, like creating multiple constructor and calling these constructor? Does anyone have any doubts? Okay, so that's all for today. Let's meet tomorrow, and tomorrow we are going to talk about some other things in the class and the last part of the class. Saloni ma'am, that's end for my side, ma'am.
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you. Yes, we will wind up, sir. We'll meet again by tomorrow at 7 p.m. Yeah, dear students, I have shared the attendance link once again on the chat. Kindly mark your attendance without any fail. We'll meet again by tomorrow at 7 p.m. Thank you all. Thank you for joining.